morning. Welcome to this episode of Cows in a Pod. Today I have a special guest whose work I've been following over the last few months and I've been intrigued by. So welcome Charu Suri, who is a pianist and composer. When I first listened to you, Charu, your work really spoke to me. I mean, I've been listening to a lot of music over the last 8 or 9 months, but there's something about your album kind of spoke to me. So I've been wanting to get in touch with you. So thank you for coming on my show.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here, Ramya. Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor.
Okay. So let's go ahead and get started and tell me about your journey from where you began, because I know you've lived in 4 continents.
Yes.
So I would love to hear where it all began and how the music, all started.
So I was born in India, in South India, in Madurai. And I grew up in Chennai, but my father got a job when I was 5 years old in Africa, in Nigeria, as the CEO of a record label. So the family basically went with him, and in his house there was a piano, and we would listen to vinyl from all different genres every single day on the turntable. It was magical. And my mom basically said I was like a freak on the piano. I would just play for hours and not stop. And so she basically said there was something there. I can't explain it. Nobody can explain it. So none of my parents really have a piano gene in them. They love music. My grandmother is very musical, but she was into Indian music. But so they couldn't really explain that affinity. But so they got me started with piano lessons. And when I came back to Chennai and spent most of my formative years there, which is high school and middle school, I won a lot of competitions. And I was concertizing from the age of 7. Pretty much on many concert halls, and played very complex pieces. When I was 9-10 years old, I had a massive knowledge of music of all walks of life, primarily classical. So I was like one of those freaks of nature on the piano. So it was a great joy to me because that kept me alive, I think, in many ways. I was not exactly a fan of reality. Reality was shocking to me. So this was my world I could escape into. And I got started there. Then after that, I continued my education in the United States.
Wow, that's fascinating, and I can relate to the escape part of it. So
Yeah.
So piano. And did you ever take to any other instrument when you were young, or it was just that one, just fascinated you?
I took to piano. I took to the violin a little bit, but then I wasn't really good at the violin. And I said to myself, I'd rather focus on something that I can really excel at and really love. The repertoire, it is the largest repertoire really exists in piano literature. So my teacher in Chennai, Mrs. Geeta Menon, was amazing. She gave me basically exposure to every single type of composer. I would play Scriabin, Rachmaninoff, Debussy, Stravinsky, Mozart, you name it. I knew all of them by the time I was 9-10 years old, which was crazy. It was really, it was crazy. I was like one of those real crazy freaks of in music. But, that was my life. So I really enjoyed it.
And then schoolwork would just go on the side, huh?
Yes, schoolwork was easy.
Yeah.
Schoolwork was like, oh yeah, great. I got the school, and I couldn't wait for schoolwork to get over so that I could get to the piano. And one of the funniest memories I have of practicing in my house in Chennai was I had this plant outside. And it was a creeper. And I practiced so much that in 1 month, the creeper grew towards the keys of the piano and started touching the keys of the piano.
Wow.
It was amazing. I should have filmed it. And then, because no other plant in the house did that. So, there's a correlation between music and plants. Plants are attracted to sounds. They are alive. They can hear. And which was the most craziest thing I've ever seen. So I woke up one day, I tumbled out of bed, ready to go practice on the piano. And I see this little beautiful tendril coming from outside the window towards the piano. And I said, that's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen.
My goodness, I never even thought about that, but you're right. I think they do respond to, I was certain that animals respond because my dog, and I sing to cows all the time, but plants is on another level.
No, but I have plants in my house all over, and they thrive in the music room. And they have a meditation room with plants not too far away from my piano, and they do so well. They're just really happy to be around music. Just kind of crazy. Nobody really thinks about that, but it's true. Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard of experiments, but wow, maybe I'm not singing enough to my plants.
You gotta stick to the plan. The tendrils have to grow to you. Then you know you're doing it right.
Then I know I'm doing it right. Okay. Okay. So from there you came to the United States, and then you've been playing music again ever since. And I know that you have released a few albums and you play live. So tell us more about that.
So when I came to the United States, I went to Princeton. I was very fortunate to have fantastic music teachers there. I give lots of concerts at Princeton. And one of my great experiences was playing a piece that I wrote for symphony orchestra that Yo-Yo Ma and Edgar Meyer both played in, which was wonderful.
Amazing.
Yeah, when I was like a teenager. And after graduating from Princeton, I just didn't really feel that I had found my voice, you know. I wanted to do something really authentic. And there was a lot of pressure to just produce, put an album out there. And even when I went to Manhattan School of Music, which is my graduate college, there was a lot of pressure to produce. Like recently, I had a cover story in the weekend section of the Hindustan Times where I talked about that, the danger of being told what to do.
Yeah.
And that the danger of conforming is actually really a serious danger to watch out for, because I didn't want to be a carbon copy of all the sounds that had existed. I really didn't. And I guess innately I was a rebel. So I didn't want to just be another jazz player with a songbook style, even though I composed in songbook style. So I said, I think now I just have to take a step back and find my voice before I'm ready to release something. And it was only 5 years ago when I went to New Orleans and I fell in love with the jazz scene there, and I took in a concert at Preservation Hall Jazz Band. The drummer from there is on my last 2 albums. That I finally realized this is what I wanted to do. Jazz is fantastic. I mean, I've listened to jazz since I was a child, but I never thought that jazz would be the medium for my compositions. And then I started saying, no, but I don't want to do Western tonal jazz. I wanted to do some more different things like Raga Jazz. I had learned Ragas when I was a child. And let's see what that experiment was like. So it started out as an experiment, and really, I didn't expect it to go anywhere. But then I started giving concerts, and I would play the standards. I would play everything from The Girl from Ipanema to Blackbird, and then I would play my Raga Jazz.
Yeah.
And it's the Raga pieces that people really responded to. So time and again, when I performed, I would get comments like, oh, that's great. We've all heard all that. What is that piece you played? And I'm like, oh my God, they actually write like this. So then, you know, that subgenre became bigger. Then I put out a first album, which did really well. Then second album, which both of them we premiered at Carnegie Hall, which is great. And then my most recent album, which is kind of epic for me, has legends on it. Steve Gadd and John Patitucci, they're all household names. Never in a million years thought my journey would take that direction. Really, honestly, I'm like kind of shell-shocked. And I even said that to my editor at the Hindustan Times, and I was just like, oh my God, this is like a real surprise to me that my albums are topping the jazz charts all over the world. We were #1 in India, actually, just a few weeks ago.
That's amazing.
In the jazz genre and all albums. The Book of Ragas Volume 2. And then we debuted this album that was just released, Rags and Ragas, debuted at #3 in the jazz charts in the United States.
Congratulations. That's fantastic. And the thing that, you know, I listen to a lot of music, and I do this stuff that you do, but I do it from a voice standpoint, right? So standards and a lot of the time people say, oh, I'm a Carnatic jazz singer, I'm an Indo jazz singer, I'm a Raga jazz. And I've even been to like really famous musicians who say that they're doing that, but I've written a couple of blog posts over it, which I got shut down for, where we have a jazz musician on stage, we have an Indian musician on stage, and then they're just doing their thing separately. And I feel like they weren't meeting really, you know. The story was not really meeting.
I've heard that, and time and again, people have said this is the first time we feel that the blend is seamless. It
It's
just
definitely
feels,
seamless, and that's why it's really exciting me. So, you
yeah,
know, this whole concept that you're doing, because I'm doing it from a voice standpoint, but from,
yeah,
listening to you doing it from a piano standpoint and actually, blending the ragas, two ragas with, with all this amazing rhythmic story that you have going on in the background. It's really exciting me. I'm actually really excited about it, which is why, I've been trying to catch you down for several weeks now. So
that's wonderful. Well, you see, I have always grown up thinking of jazz as a trio quartet chamber mindset. And so I've been very influenced by David Brubeck and Bill Evans and that style, and Oscar Peterson. So I guess in my head, that's how jazz should sound like. Everyone has their own version of jazz, but to do it with the ragas, so that was what I wanted to do. And nobody could understand it until I actually wrote it and put it out there. And then everyone was like, "Oh my God, this is freaking amazing!" So thank you. So it's really wonderful for me because I've received a ton of press coverage. Even Jazz's magazine, it was kind of unprecedented last year. They put every single one of my album songs on their featured podcast. Usually, an artist is lucky to get one track. They put every track on their editors' picks, which was amazing to me. I think part of it is that fascination with the new sound.
Well, I think it's so that's the thing, right? It's the emotive nature of the ragas, which we can bring to this, right? So I think the lyrical aspect from the songbook is fantastic, because that to me, coming from an Indian background, that spoke to me a lot. But I think the emotive aspect of what you're bringing into this whole, the story is what we think. I mean, they think of it as a new sound, so to speak, but I think for us, we've just grown up with it, right? So
we've grown up with that from a melodic nature. We haven't grown up with it from a harmonic perspective. Exactly. That's the challenge. Even my own Raga teacher, every week I dedicate myself to lessons, Raga lessons and jazz lessons, because I think in order to grow, we have to know our source. And I played my ragas to my Raga teacher, and she's like, it sounds so different when you put all those chords underneath it. I said, yes, because we grew up in India learning the ragas primarily from a rhythmic and melodic perspective. And then when you put that extra layer in, it's its own genre almost.
It is.
And when I do shows in theaters, it's really beautiful because I have graphics in the background. I have Raga lighting to anchor it in a particular time of day. It's actually really quite spectacular.
Oh, wow. That's what a treat, Charu.
It really is.
That's amazing. So, who are your favorite artists at the moment? Have you been listening to anyone who strikes out as, oh yeah, this is someone I'd like to work with? Or have you been traveling so much that I understand if you've been so busy and kind of trying to promote your album?
Well, there's a lot of collaborators at the Recording Academy. I have met some fantastic vocalists. Of course, Aruj Aftab, who's the Pakistani singer, is amazing. I would love to collaborate with her one day.
Yeah.
And I think even vocalists who are Carnatic trained or Hindustani trained, but want to do something a little bit different. Yeah. There's a fantastic violinist, quite a few violinists I've met through the Recording Academy. Lily Hayden is incredible. She's with Opium Moon. I definitely want to work with her one day. Natalie Bonin is another violinist. Philip Vaimon I worked with on my last album. He's extraordinary. He's based on the West Coast. There's a few harpists that I met that love it. And harp sounds a little bit like the Santoor, if you can actually, that sound. But I deliberately didn't want to bring in Indian instruments in my trio or quartet. Everyone asked me, why don't you bring a tabla? I said, no, that defeats the point. The point is to take a more Western framework with jazz, but bring in the Eastern influence so that it feels like it's a seamless continuum of that genre. So there's a lot of sounds, textures, and timbres I want to experiment with in my next Carnegie Hall appearance. I played there 3 times. Next year in April, I'll have a dulcimer player.
Nice.
Who will come and play the ragas with me. And I'm very, very excited about that because they're both percussive instruments, the dulcimer, the piano. The timbres are so different and they sound fantastic together.
Yeah, the dulcimer, my neighbor who's 92, he actually built a dulcimer.
Wow.
Yeah, he's really good with his hands, and he built one, and he played a piece at we host music evenings at our house, and he played it sounded so beautiful. It just took me to another place and time. So I just
and even in my latest album, Rags and Ragas, there are 2 tracks that have a fantastic oud player on it. And the oud is a Middle Eastern instrument, and it's beautiful. The sound is so different with the piano. There's all these possibilities. I'm talking to someone in R&B who does beats. They want to do a raga beat, number. There's all these possibilities that can happen. So
absolutely, yeah.
I am just beginning. I started in jazz, and of course, that whole mindset and improvisation will still be jazz, but you can sort of put that style on a variety of other genres.
Yeah, that's the beauty of it. So you can experiment without having any fear of what will someone think, because it has to sound a certain way, right? So
right, exactly.
Sweet. And in terms of your creative process, do you have any specific things you go to? Like, do you have at the top of your hat say, hey, this is what I'm going to do, I'm going to start off? Or are you more of an improvisational, I'm just going to practice when I want to, when something inspires me? And how do you write music?
So practice, I'm very disciplined. I do practice pretty much every day. I do give some time, both the classical and the jazz repertoire. I try to give the due, because I do think that innately you've got to put in that hard work and put in that I still study every week. I study with my jazz teacher. Just last week we were learning all the original chords of I Got Rhythm by George Gershwin, that song has been so instrumental in the world of jazz. It's been played countless times in various styles and veins. So to just decode that and relearn that, I try to devote that study. Compositionally, I know it's really hard to believe when I say this, but almost none of my pieces have required rewrites. They just come out as it is. It's sort of like I sit down and it comes out in its entirety. That's partly because I've been doodling in my head for a little bit, maybe some subliminal things going on. I find my best pieces are the ones that just sort of come out. Nice. And most of the time, they come out from after an intense emotional experience, more so than a practicing virtuosic experience. It's like what Bill Evans said, jazz is a feeling. Yeah. I think if you don't have that feeling or energy, the piece doesn't really come out the way it's supposed to. So there have been days where I've had lackluster days, like everyone. Then there's days where I'll just come out with my last album, Ragas and Waltzes, I wrote right after my dad died, and it was such an emotional, intense experience for me that I wasn't even thinking when I was writing. I was just like writing. It was just like, that's it. This is it.
Flowing.
It just flows. And I didn't have time to second guess myself, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
I think the moment you start second guessing and going back, then it actually weighs on the piece a lot more. So I try not to do that. Yeah. Then whenever, a piece doesn't come out very well, I'm like, oh, okay, maybe that wasn't meant to be.
That's so it's kind of like a detachment to what you.
It's very much that. I do believe that one has to be really hands and like fully into the piece, into the moment, to get something really beautiful. Otherwise, it feels like it's contrived and it's an exercise more than it is a piece.
So you create it on your piano and then you write it, or how do you?
Yes, almost all my pieces are composed at the keyboard right here.
At your piano, right. Okay.
Yeah.
And then you put it down, and then that's the next step.
And then I write it down. Yes, exactly.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I think I think that's an important thing, right? Detaching from what you create, and it's
Yeah.
so important. Yeah. I've been reading Rick Rubin's. I don't know if you read his latest book. It's amazing. He talks about that, where you just have to create and just let go, right?
I just think that's what it is.
Yeah.
I never, my last album, Rags and Ragas, the one that I put into the Grammys this year, I didn't really know how it came about. I don't even know. I can't even recall, because
Wow, that's fascinating.
it is actually fascinating. I don't have a memory of writing it in that way. I know it just exists, and it's just inexplicable. I don't even have a memory sometimes of writing things. It just, I'm in the zone, and it's just born, and it's just like, it's there. It's the best way, because the moment I start over analyzing, oh, I woke up at this time and I did this, it just destroys it for me.
So once you have your tracks, then you reach out to musicians and see if they're
Yes,
interested in playing.
exactly.
Okay,
That's
so
how I do it.
That's
Yeah.
the next step, right? But
Yes,
during
that's
the
the
step, you just kind of do it. Yeah.
I just do it.
Wow, that's thank you for sharing that. It's always fascinating to hear, the way people think about these things, or don't think, and sometimes they have it down. Great. And then in terms of mentoring, do you mentor any kids, or other?
I teach about 30 kids each week, which is a staggering number of piano students, but I have a lot of students, and I have a wait list of students. I mentor them. I teach them everything from theory to practice to competitions, put them through exams. 7 of my students are making their Carnegie Hall debut this year. I'm very committed to education. It's a lot of work, but I'm very happy to do it, because if my teacher didn't do that for me, I would not have come so far. So I really believe in paying it forward, That's part of my reason for doing this. It's not just to perform, it's to inspire others and give them the tools to succeed.
Yeah. Well, that's amazing. Yeah. I believe in that too. And I feel like the more we teach, the more we learn too, right? It's kind of like this process.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I think that this album has so much potential. So it's really exciting to see how you've brought ragas to the forefront, and there's so much promise. So folks, I'll put the link to listen to Charu's album. It's called Rags and Ragas, and it's fascinating. You'll once you hear it, you'll realize how nice it sounds, and it's also really deep in several levels. You listen, like I had to listen to it a few times to actually see the different layers that
Wow, thank you.
So it's really nice. So I'll put the link on the chat. Is there anything else you'd like to share with the listeners for any future projects or any current shows that you're doing, etc.?
So I'm working on planning my next India tour, and I'm working on a London tour. We got booked to play at some festivals in London, which is great. And I have a very nice number of shows this year, the Caribbean for New Year's Eve, and all my shows are on my website, and I also share them on social. But I'm excited at taking this on the road, this album on the road. We just performed this at the Grammy Museum 2 weekends ago, which was such a wonderful concert. It's a beautiful stage. I was really honored to play there. That's a big one.
Nice.
And then the reception to that, because that's the first time a lot of people had heard me on the West Coast live, especially this new album, was mind-blowing. People just loved it. So I was very grateful, because when you're putting something like this that's so new, without precedence out there, you just don't know what the reception is going to be. So I was very happy with that.
I think, and that's also a really positive way to look about the positive way to look at it is also that it's so new and it's a new sound. There's so much possibility and so much potential out there.
Yes.
So,
exactly.
So which is really exciting. So All right, Charu. So thank you so much for being on my show. Any final thoughts before we sign off?
No, I just think this is a great time for jazz, especially in India. I like you. I've heard your work and it's incredible.
Thank you.
I find that I've been really amazed at some of the musicians I played with on my last India tour. They're phenomenal.
Yeah.
Phenomenal. I mean, I was really, really blown away. I think this is the time for jazz in India. I really do.
Yeah.
I think jazz in America is benefiting from the cross-pollination of global influences. And I see that everywhere.
Yeah.
I've been really impressed at how many new sounds and new pathways are being formed from young composers, female composers, female leaders. It's really a great time.
Yeah.
I think that's much needed.
Yeah.
I just think that, it also comes with a lot of study. I think the reason why this blend sounds so seamless is I literally spent years.
I love that you're saying that, because I get students who come to me and say, hey, I want to do what you're doing.
No.
Oh, I want to do Indo jazz. And I think it's a very high level way of thinking. You can't do that. You have to really put in
the time and years. No, this is the product. The reason why it sounds effortless is I've basically given my life to make it sound effortless. Exactly. And that's really the truth. To do one genre is hard, but to blend two genres requires an insane amount of back work and listening to various interpretations of the ragas, understanding the components of what a bandish is, understanding the components and how a raga is improvised upon, then taking those elements and then putting that into the jazz vein, and then making sure the balance of a trio or quartet is correct. It's so much to think about. And everyone listens to it and is like, oh my God, this is such a great blend. I'm like, yeah, there's a reason why Mozart sounds effortless, because he worked so hard to make it sound effortless.
Well, I think it's just everything, heart, mind, soul. It's everything, just put into that over the years, which finally has come out, right? So it takes a while. It takes time for something to come out, and I'm so glad that you have this album for people who are interested in doing this stuff to realize that it takes more effort than it really looks. So thank you for saying
that. Meets the eye. No, yeah. When I performed last year in India and I showed some of the students how to do this Raga Jazz, their mindset was more Indian, how to take the Indian classical approach of how to take a raga and improvise it. And then I kept pushing them to syncopate something, to harmonize something, to give something extra. And then they finally, when it clicked, they're like, oh my God, this can go such different directions.
Yes.
But it does take a lot of time to study and everything. So that's the crystallization here.
Right. Wow, thank you for saying that. I think that is a very important point, and that's what a wonderful way to think about this before we sign off, is that for those of you who are listening, keep the effort going, and just put your heart, mind, and soul into what you're doing, and and over time it will come to you. It's just
absolutely yes. I do think this is my best album, but then I've had 4 other albums before this, so imagine all of that learning that took place. It's learning. Every single album, every single tune is a learning experience for future growth.
Right, absolutely. Okay, Charu, thank you so much. I know I have to let you go because you have tons of other things you're doing today. I would love to do a part 2 of this sometime when you're less busy. I know you're promoting your album right now. So thank you for sparing your 45 minutes with us, and it's very inspiring, and we're going to keep an eye out and ear out whatever for your album. So thanks again, and have a great day. All the best. All right.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor. Bye-bye.